Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I've always been an avid gardener. There's just something so relaxing about getting my hands dirty, nurturing seeds into sprouts, and watching my hard work blossom into a beautiful array of colors and textures. My garden is my pride and joy. I designed the layout myself, with winding stone pathways leading to secret sitting nooks and flower beds overflowing with lilies, roses, and hydrangeas. It's my own private sanctuary, a place to unwind and find peace after a long day. That peace was shattered the day my neighbor Karen moved in. Right from the start, she made it clear that my garden was now her own personal playground. I'd be out watering my plants, and I'd catch her just strolling along the pathways, poking and prodding at my flowers with no regard for the damage she was causing. At first, I tried politely asking her to stay out, explaining that the garden was on my property and not open to the public. Karen simply scoffed and insisted that neighborhood gardens were meant to be shared by all. Her entitled attitude grated on my nerves, but I held my tongue and hoped she'd lose interest eventually. No such luck. If anything, Karen's uninvited visits increased over the following weeks. She'd parade through daily, sometimes multiple times a day, leaving bruised stems and trampled flower beds in her wake. I invested so much time and money into that garden, and now this woman was ruining it simply because she felt entitled to do as she pleased. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I glanced out the window and spotted Karen doing her usual stroll through the garden. That was the last straw. I rushed outside and confronted her, making it abundantly clear that she was trespassing on private property and needed to leave immediately. Karen stared at me blankly before letting out an exasperated sigh. "Don't be so selfish," she scolded. "No one owns nature." Then, to my utter disbelief, she sat down on my favorite garden bench and began untying her shoelaces. "I want you off my property this instant," I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. Karen waved her hand dismissively and started massaging her socked feet. "Can't you see I'm busy? Stop harassing me and go make yourself useful in the kitchen." That was it. I'd had enough of her condescending attitude and blatant disregard for personal boundaries. I pulled out my phone to call the police, figuring a warning from the authorities would make this woman realize her behavior was unacceptable. As soon as she saw me dialing, Karen leaped up from the bench and stormed over. "How dare you!" she shrieked, slapping the phone from my hands. "I'll teach you to threaten me, you crazy old bat!" Before I could react, she grabbed me by the shoulders and shoved me to the ground. I landed hard on the stone pathway, pain shooting through my hip. Karen towered over me, face twisted in rage. "No one puts their hands on me! I'll see you rot in jail for this!" Then she turned and hurried out of the garden, leaving me stunned and shaken in the dirt. As the initial shock wore off, I feared what she might do next. Would she actually try to press charges against me, make up wild accusations to get me arrested? Anxious scenarios raced through my mind as I struggled to my feet and limped back inside. I needed to get ahead of this. I called cops right away, breathlessly explaining what happened between me and the deranged neighbor who assaulted me. The operator assured me an officer was on the way. In the meantime, she advised me to lock my doors and remain vigilant in case Karen returned. I thanked her and hung up, grabbing a baseball bat from the closet just to be safe. I peered nervously through the blinds, praying the police would arrive before Karen could retaliate. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted the flashing lights pulling up outside. Relief washed over me. I opened the door to greet the officers, eager to give my statement so Karen could finally face consequences for her unhinged behavior. I was just starting to explain the situation when a blood-curdling shriek rang out from the direction of my garden. "Help! She's got a weapon! She's trying to kill me!" My heart dropped into my stomach. I'd know that shrill voice anywhere. It was Karen. Before I could utter a word, she came sprinting from the garden, crocodile tears streaming down her face. "Officers, arrest her! She lured me here and tried to attack me with a baseball bat." I stood frozen in shock as Karen spun her web of lies, portraying herself as an innocent victim to these officers who had only heard one side of the story. It was my word against hers. I pleaded for them to listen, insisting I had only grabbed the bat to protect myself from her, but my desperation only made me look unhinged in their eyes. The officers attempted to defuse the situation, asking Karen to leave the premises given the obvious conflict between us. I felt a rush of relief as they escorted her away. She shot me a smug grin over her shoulder, knowing she had succeeded in spinning the narrative against me. Just when I thought the ordeal was over, I was startled by shouting from the officers. I rushed outside to see my precious garden engulfed in flames. Karen must have grabbed a lighter and set it ablaze right before making her dramatic entrance. The officers scrambled to contain the fire while I stood there, forced to helplessly watch years of nurturing and memories turn to ash. By the time the fire was extinguished, little remained except charred ruins. Karen pretended to comfort me, declaring it a tragic accident. I knew better. This was a deliberate act of destruction born from petty vengeance, but I had no way to prove it. The officers filed their report, classifying the source as unknown rather than the premeditated arson I knew it to be. I was too weary to argue. The damage was done. In the following days, I agonized over my inability to make Karen face true justice. She still resided right next door, likely cooking up her next scheme after getting away scot-free with such heinous acts. It made me paranoid, glancing over my shoulder constantly in case she was lurking. I started looking into legal options. Even without hard evidence, there had to be something I could do to protect myself. During my research, I came across civil harassment restraining orders. Relief washed over me. This could legally force Karen to keep her distance without needing to prove criminal guilt. I meticulously documented every incident, every unwanted visit and threatening interaction, building an airtight case. No more cowering in fear of this deranged bully. I was getting my power back. At the court hearing, Karen feigned innocence, arguing she was just being neighborly by using my garden. But the sheer volume of evidence I presented painted a clear picture of harassment. The judge approved the restraining order on the spot, banning Karen from contacting me or coming within 100 feet of my property for 3 full years. The second those words left the judge's mouth, Karen's polite facade crumbled. "You'll pay for this!" she spat, lunging across the barrier. The officers restrained her as she thrashed and hurled obscenities. I stood tall, refusing to show an ounce of intimidation. The law was on my side now. Her reign of terror was over. As I left the courthouse, a sense of peace washed over me. For the first time in ages, I could tend my garden without constantly peering over my shoulder, bracing for the next unwanted intrusion. Karen's damage could not be undone, but new growth would blossom from the ashes, and I could nurture it freely, unburdened by fear and undeterred by bullies. The garden was mine once more, my sanctuary, my solace, my own little patch of serenity that no one could take from me again. The next one is a pro-revenge story. This all happened around Christmas, New Year's, but I just found this sub, and I'm obsessed with it now, so I have to share my story. My grandparents immigrated to Canada from Italy in the 70s and opened up a restaurant. When they passed away, the restaurant went to my parents. Over the decades, they grew and expanded it. I have been working at the restaurant since I was 15. Over time, my parents got older and eventually retired, becoming snowbirds, going to Florida for the winters. They left the restaurant to me about a few years ago, but still retaining a small percentage ownership as an additional revenue stream, along with their savings and annuities. As soon as I gained control, I pretty much modernized the old place. I remodeled the restaurant, changed the logo, reached out to the local and national papers to put out ads, invited food critics, bloggers, vloggers, etc. It was very slow at first, and I began to worry that the loan I took out to do all this was the biggest mistake I had ever made, and I had ruined 3 generations of my family's business. But eventually, it began to work, and a local semi-famous YouTuber featured us in one of his videos, which was the catalyst for more people to come and review. Eventually, we were seeing 5x10x, the business we usually get, even on a Monday. We became a hotspot for major events, and it wasn't uncommon for a celebrity to come. On those nights, I even arranged for special high-profile chefs to visit and cook for our guests. It costs a fortune. So, during the holidays, we were beyond packed. It got to the point where people would have had to make reservations in July to get a table in December. This process took years to get to where we are now. When it gets busy, I don't just sit in the back office. I'm on the floor doing whatever needs to be done, even if that means I greet people, bus tables, or even mop the floors. On other nights, when we have high-profile guests or events, I'm in a blazer and acting in charge, though. One night, a group of 6 women walked in. 5 of them looked like they were still in their early 20s, and the head of the group looked like she was in her mid-20s. My best theory was that she was one of the other 4 girls' older sister or possibly an older sorority sister to incoming college freshmen. I was greeting at the door, and as they were walking up, Queen Bee Karen was telling the baby Karens how this place is awesome, the food is amazing, and there might even be celebrities here. When she came up to me, she told me she needed a table for 6. I replied, "Of course, can I please get the name on the reservation?" She looked at me and said, "Oh, I didn't make one, but it's okay. The owner is a personal friend of mine, and he said he always has 1 or 2 tables that he keeps open for special guests, and said we can have one of those tonight." Now, generally this is true of many high-profile restaurants, and lately I have been doing that as well, but I had no clue who this woman was, and she definitely never spoke to me about any of this. I did get that she was trying to get in without a reservation, but she literally picked the worst person she could possibly talk to, and try this. I told her, "I am sorry, but we cannot seat anyone without a reservation. As you can see, we do not have any seats available." I didn't want to go all out and say, "I'm the owner and we have never spoken before, so I never promised you a thing," because I didn't want to embarrass her in front of the other girls she was with, at first. She then went on and said out loud to one of the other girls to take a picture of me. She will speak to the owner and make sure I'm either cleaning the toilet or fired by the end of the week. The other girls, following her lead, were like, "Yeah, kiss your minimum wage job goodbye." I'm not sure if they were in on it with her, or if they honestly thought she knew the owner. Queen Bee Karen then said, "Look, you can just give us a table or I can make life very difficult for you. This is not worth losing your job," constantly pointing and trying to put me down, saying things like, "Obviously, you aren't anyone here because if you were, you would know who I am and never even try to tell me anything other than yes or of course," constantly trying to belittle me and get that table. At this point, it was a long day for me, and the way I saw it, I had 3 options. 1. Tell her I'm the owner and just call her out on all of this. 2. Just give her the table and let it be. 3. Teach Queen Bee Karen and her little minions a lesson. I chose option 3 for various reasons, including some personality flaws I'm aware that I have, but I like to think it was at least 50% really wanting to teach her a lesson. I smiled at her, said, "Of course, ma'am, follow me please." And I gave her one of the 3 tables we keep open in case a celebrity comes in. It happens from time to time. I told her I apologize for everything, and she is right. It would be simpler to just give her the table. I also told her that the first 3 rounds of drinks will be complimentary. I sat them down and personally served them. As they were sitting down, I told them we do need one of your credit cards and IDs just to keep on file, and we will give it back to you before you leave. Queen Karen gave me her cards and told the baby Karen minions that tonight was on her. I took their orders and got them their free drinks and told them, due to how busy we are tonight, there might be a delay on the food. All the girls were thinking of and cared about were their free rounds. They ordered their 3 rounds and still no food. They eventually called me and asked me to check on it, the whole time giving me the world's nastiest attitude since even before they ordered. I told them I will check on it, but also asked if they would like any more drinks. They ordered 2 more rounds by the time the appetizers arrived. At this point, they are all drunk, having done nothing but drink on an empty stomach most of the night and only having had salads after. As more food arrives, the more drinks are ordered. What these girls never realized was they were at our VIP table, which alone costs a few thousand just to sit in, but I didn't charge them for that. What I did charge them for was all the super expensive cocktails they had throughout the whole night, except for the first 3 rounds. In addition, the table they were sitting at, as mentioned, was VIP, so the menus were a bit different. For one, they don't show prices on them, trade secret, and in addition it had certain higher-end menu options such as white truffle, black caviar dishes, and specially imported West Coast oysters, among other things. At one point in the night, I was honestly rethinking what I was doing and thought I might be going too far with these poor girls. They might not know any better. But some things reassured me throughout the night, such as one of the baby Karens asked me if I felt like my life was worthless, since all I ever became was a waiter. Also, one of my other employees told me how they were discussing how to mess with me to the point that they can just do this whenever they want, and I will know to always give them a table. I also overheard them say, "He's cute, but I would never date a waiter like that. He is such a pushover." There were a bunch of comments like that the whole night, so I kept on with their life lesson. By the end of the night, each girl racked up a bill in the range of $500, $600 per girl. When I handed Queen Karen the bill of $4,232.23 with tax and tip included, of course, I had never seen anyone sober up so quickly. She went from laughing and giggling with her friends to nearly in tears. She called me over instantly and asked if this was some kind of joke. I took the bill, looked it over, and said, "Oh, yes, I apologize. I will get you the correct bill in a moment." Again, she felt a complete sense of relief, thinking she got someone else's bill, called me a foolish idiot, and went on talking to her friends. To be fair, I did make a mistake. I forgot to count her 8th order of a dozen oysters that cost about $120 per order, so I gladly just went back and added it to the order. When I went back to give her the correct bill, she flipped out again, going crazy. I just asked if there was something on this bill that she didn't order. She and the girls, in shock, went over every single line of the bill, including the first few lines that showed their original 3 rounds, which said, "complimentary." They then took out their phones and line by line went over everything for the 100th time, adding everything up. Extremely rattled, Queen Bee Karen simply said, "1 second, I need to use the washroom." Part of me thought that she might just pull a dine and dash and leave the baby Karens with the bill. But low-key, I did remind her in a way that we had her ID and CC without making it obvious that I thought she was going to run out on the bill. 10 minutes later, she came back with new makeup. Obviously, she had been crying, and made up a whole story about how the food was awful, the drinks were bad, and so on, demanding that as a bare minimum, I should cut the bill in half with the agreement the baby Karens will chip in, even though she originally told them the night would be on her. Then, as if a light bulb went off in her head, she again mentioned her relationship with the owner, as if it were to give me additional incentive to cut the bill in half. Holding back a grin at this point, I told her no. Just no, I can't change the bill. She whipped out her phone and showed me a series of texts with someone called my restaurant's name owner, which pretty much I realized was what she was doing in the bathroom. She probably changed one of the other Karen minions' contact names and deleted previous texts to start this new script. I read them, then clicked on the contact info and told her that's not the owner's cell number. Her reply was, "He has multiple phones for business and stuff. Of course, you don't know all his numbers." I remembered, wow, this girl thought of everything, except I'm the actual owner. I told her, "How about this? If we call him and he says that it's okay to take 50% off the bill, then I'll do it." Her reply was yelling and screaming, and by this time, the few remaining customers all began to start looking, and I knew it was time to end this. I told her, already in a less accommodating voice, "Cut the nonsense, little girl. You don't know the owner, you have never been here before, and if you keep yelling, I will call the police." Her demeanor changed, and she was trying to defend herself the best she could. My reply to her weak comebacks was, "My grandparents founded this restaurant, my family has been running this place for generations, and I have worked here almost my entire life. I am the one and only owner of this restaurant, and I have never once seen you, heard of you, and I definitely never made a promise to a stranger I don't know, and have never met before tonight." The mini Karens were just frozen and didn't even know how to react. Queen Bee Karen was in tears. I said, "Now, I gave you the table you wanted, one of your specially reserved tables for high-end clients, which I didn't charge you for. And I gave you 3 rounds of free drinks. If you don't pay your bill, I will call the cops and hand them your ID." In tears, Queen Karen signed the bill, and the mini Karens took out their purses to give her whatever cash they had, which equaled maybe a couple of hundred, with the promise to pay her back more. 2 days later, a man walked into my restaurant, fuming, and asked one of my bartenders to speak to me. I was in the back office for a bit working, so he waited a good half hour for me. He was Queen Bee Karen's father. She was with him too, keeping her head down. I took them both to my office and showed him highlights of the security cameras, which were especially good quality of audio because they were in the VIP section. We had to keep good records because we had had other unrelated incidents before, so I showed him most of it, their comments, their orders, their everything. When all was said and done, he stormed out with her, screaming at her the whole time they were walking away. Haven't seen or heard from either of them since, but the original bill I gave them, The one that didn't count the $120 oysters is framed on my desk. Side note, I didn't lose as much overhead on the table in 3 rounds as you might think. The table was originally supposed to be empty, so I didn't lose anything, since I didn't expect to gain anything to begin with, and the overhead for the food and other drinks more than covered the loss on the 3 free first rounds. I thought about posting this on Nuclear Revenge, but I read some of the stories there, and I think making this girl pay a few thousand and giving her a life lesson doesn't qualify. Some of the revenge there is life-ending revenge stories and losses in the tens or hundreds of thousands. The next one is a petty revenge story. So I'm staying at this nice hotel, and I get free breakfast with my room. I go downstairs and sit down for breakfast. It's a nice buffet. There's an egg station where you can fill out a card, and they make the egg you order. Anyways, from behind me, I hear this shrill voice of none other than a Karen. Now I'm in Asia, so this is an Asian Karen, which is even worse. Since they pay and that pay goes to the waiters, they think they own said waiters. Anyways, she keeps yelling, "Waiter!" But the place was understaffed at the moment. The egg guy, 2 waiters, and the check-in lady were there. There were maybe 15 people eating breakfast at the time. "Waitress, we'll be with you in a moment." Karen, fine. A few minutes later, the waitress stopped by Karen's table. Karen, "I never asked for ham in my omelet." Waitress, "Okay, I will check your slip." Comes back after a moment. "Ma'am, you did check the box for ham. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. We'll make you another one as soon as possible." Karen, "No, I want it now." Waitress, "Ma'am, we have other customers to attend to." Karen, "I don't care. You need to satisfy everyone here, and I'm not satisfied, so make me another egg now, no ham." The egg guy must have heard because he did not look pleased. The waitress walked over and told him Karen's order, and I could see a big grin grow across his face. He started making the new omelet, and seeing this, Karen seemed happy but kept an eye on the process from her seat. Egg guy from across the room, "You wanted extra ham, right?" Karen, "No, no ham at all." Egg guy, "Sorry, I can't hear you." As he said this, he locked eyes with her and poured the entire bowl of ham into the egg, and Karen let out a screech like she just saw Satan suck her child's toes. Edit. The story was unfolding as I was writing it, so I didn't have the full thing yet. After the banshee screech, she, of course, started yelling about how she demanded to see the hotel manager, as any Karen would. It took them about 20 minutes to call him over, and by the time he was there and there were more staff and I was almost finished eating, he, of course, asked what was going on and why she was screeching like a demon was raping her husband. They finally managed to calm her down. After going into the kitchen for a quick chat with the omelet guy and the waitress, he came back out, apologized to Karen for the trouble, and she got away with a free breakfast for her trouble. Now you may think that she got off easy and got even a free breakfast, but the way my hotel works is if they really feel sorry, they'll actually compensate you with maybe another night at the hotel, free drinks, room service, keys. But free breakfast is the least they ever give out, and it is so easy to get. So really, she just got a whining present, and in all honesty, it cost the hotel nothing. The woman is probably going to show up tomorrow at breakfast, and something similar will happen. We'll see. I'll head down just to watch it unravel. Anyways, that's it. Not much, and to be honest, she was just being kinda idioty. But when a restaurant is understaffed, you can't expect them to wait only on you, so she kinda had it coming. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.